This is episode 52, and I just wanted to say that this is a huge milestone for the Moon Tea podcast because we have now been doing this podcast for over a year, and we had aimed, John told me a while back, he's like, when we first started, he's like, let's talk about this after a year and see if we want to continue. We did it. We finally did it. I just want to celebrate.
Ooh, yeah.
Thanks, Andy, for being on our 52nd podcast.
Oh man. Dude. I love it. Congratulations, boys.
We need to send Andy a plaque.
Right? Oh man, seriously. And shout out to like JT Jack Attack for helping out and supporting and getting Andy and head of client relations, as John says. And everybody else who's been on. So thank you all.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Moon Tea podcast. Today we have Andy Wright. Woo! Welcome, Andy. I don't know, Andy, do you want to introduce yourself, or Hugh, do you want to do something?
Totally. So Andy's a really good friend of mine, and we go way back to Pomona College and Pitzer College, and we swam on the same swim team together. And Andy and I have a deeper bond than that, in the sense that we were both media studies students, and now Andy is a doctoral candidate, a PhD student in media studies, and I'm excited to learn more about that as we go and catch up. It's been a few years since Andy and I have hung out, since Pomona Pitzer times. What is it? 2018, June, right?
2018, I think we figured out.
Yeah. It's amazing. Time's flown. Yeah, it's flown. And for those listening on like Spotify or something else, Andy has an amazing stash right now. Beautiful do, looking great. Love it. I love it so much.
Oh yeah, growing the hair out for the wedding here, so it's it's as full as it'll get here. I'll say that.
I love that. And yeah, he's gonna be a married man soon. That's amazing. Massive congrats there.
Yeah, wow. Thank you. And thank you all for having me.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. If there's anything I missed, please add in. But if not, let's just dive right into whatever it is we want to talk about.
Yeah, perfect. I think you hit it right on the nose. Doctoral student at UT Austin in media studies. So I'm happy to be joining y'all from sunny Austin right now, or at least I think it's sunny. I haven't been outside for a while.
Wow. Oh, very cool. Were you the same year as Hugh?
I was actually 1 year under Hugh. So Hugh graduated 1 year before me, but we were in the same department. Although Hugh was obviously much more talented with video production and editing and all that good stuff. I was more on the complaining about stuff on the critical side of things. So more on the writing side.
So impressive.
Well, Hugh did do a lot of work to put our video editing flow together. It's a little embarrassing that I was editing videos for a long time, because now Hugh does it in like, I don't know what, like 10 minutes or something. Like you have all these blocks, and then you just kind of like copy paste them in.
Bit by bit, systematize. Yeah. Here we go. Just improving production pipelines bit by bit. No.
Cool. Well, nice to meet you, Andy. We're just, I guess, meeting for the first time, and thanks for coming on. So my question has to do with your undergrad major and your research right now. But can you explain for the layman what entails, like what does studying media studies entail, and then like maybe go a little into your research and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kind of start with because you were asking about undergrad, I'll start a little bit with that and delve into some of the path that I've taken after that here. So the Claremont colleges, which both Hugh and I went to, as well as my brother, who Hugh knows. I think they overlap for 1 year as well. So that's kind of exciting. But so the Claremont Colleges sort of has a Department of Media Studies that's kind of based in critically studying media, specifically film. The school I went to, Pitzer, is a little more, has like a larger activist bent to it. So like a lot of the folks there are working with kind of smaller nonprofits after school, or going into video production sort of in a smaller way. And, that could look like there were folks who were working with like drag balls out in LA. Me and a couple of folks who were in my program like worked with the Costanoan Rumsen tribe out in Pomona, California. But that's just kind of give you a lay of the land of the department. I personally, like I said, I'm more on the critical studies side of it. So I do a lot of just kind of applying humanities theory more generally to media. And I used to be more in film. So for instance, my undergraduate thesis that I produced was sort of a post-colonial critique of American road movies, and sort of basically laying out this theory that you can't really ever show the American road without positioning someone in some sort of gaze from on the road and someone as the object of the gaze off the road. And so that finished up in 2016. From there, I worked for a year with AmeriCorps in San Jose, helping out in an elementary school in San Jose. Worked a year, as well as some before that, part-time in the craft beer industry with Anheuser-Busch. And then from there, applied to the radio, TV, film department at UT Austin, which kind of brought me to my current path. I did my MA there from 2018 to 2020. Actually, on the long drive from Portland, Oregon, where I'm originally from, to Austin, Texas, I actually stopped for a couple of days and stayed with Hugh. So that was kind of a fun. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of the penultimate stop before ultimately moving to Austin in August of 2018. So that was an exciting trip. But sorry to focus a little bit here. My work in my master's was sort of around, basically I pivoted pretty quickly once I entered my master's program because of how much I saw digital media affecting the way that we lived our daily lives. And so specifically smartphones and smartphone push notifications. So basically what my master's thesis ended up being was an elaboration of just the different ways that I saw smartphone push notifications, specifically iPhone push notifications, impacting daily life. And so that kind of culminated in a journal article that I published in December here about basically, again, laying out more theories. If there's something that I do within media studies, it's looking at new media and applying some sort of theory that's been around for a while to it. But sort of the focus of that work was how are these notifications that are being generated by these networked apps that are hooked up to home cameras. So like Ring Neighbors or Nextdoor. You might have heard of like Citizen or something like that also. Although I focus pretty explicitly on Neighbors and Nextdoor, and how the notifications generated from that can actually begin to create these sort of narratives of what our neighborhoods look like, or like what happens in our neighborhood. So if what you see is, 20 notifications a day about crime or about fire, how does that impact your image of the world outside your door? Which during the pandemic. Certainly we were not going outdoors that much. So I thought that was kind of an interesting topic to pick on. And that's kind of where I've been angling towards for that doctoral research as well. I've just finished up coursework, so my doctoral research is kind of still in its early stages, but that's sort of the base that I'm building off of. That makes sense.
That is super cool. Just as an anecdote, I like following up on your point about like some notifications can influence how you view the world. I totally had that experience where I subscribed to the NYC subreddit, and every single day there were posts about some crime that happened somewhere in New York City. And the first few days I was like, oh, okay, like I guess this is what people are talking about. And then after like 5 days, I was like, dude, I'm getting paranoid just like living my life. And I understand that these happen, but I also understand that there are like millions of people living here. And so I'm glad I unsubscribed. But yeah, for a while I was just like, I'm becoming paranoid and like I don't like this. So yeah, good on you for doing that research and like I guess bringing to light how even small behaviors like that can play a huge role in like how you see the world.
Yeah, and that's very much like the foundational writers in media studies came out of like the 1940s and sort of were at a certain point like reactionary to Nazi propaganda. And so the idea there was that like, oh, there's this new form of media that's really making people, it's kind of fooling people. But I think that's I think there is something we can grab from that about like media does have this impact on our lives without like accepting that we don't have any control of that. So stories like that, where people realize what media is doing and take an action to change their media consumption, that's really what I think is an interesting part of the field right now of media studies, especially. And also just like how we're all living these days at a certain point. So I'm glad you shared that story. That's what I'm trying to say.
Wow.
So what was the journal article recently published about? It was about the notifications for the different neighborhood apps, or like what was the finding?
Yeah, that was, again, it's basically, it's the finding at a certain point was, again, we're thinking of media studies, just putting forth sort of theories about social behavior or like cultural practices. Basically, the main theory that I was running with that piece was that these notifications are producing these narratives about the places that we live in, and that isolating effects of the pandemic were making that grow like more impactful in our lives. So the sort of phenomenon that I came up with through that was something I called the notification. So sort of these stories that are told in our lives through our notifications that may not necessarily be designed into the app. They're not an intentional part of the app, and they're not intentionally produced by the users, but there's this impact in our daily lives nonetheless that I was sort of theorizing. And that's in the Imaginations Journal, I think is what it's called.
Awesome. We'll have to put a link in the show notes below when we go through this. Really cool.
Cool.
Notification. I love that.
That's so cool, Andy. You're out here just like coining words for, I don't know, like social studies textbooks in the future. You're like, yeah, it's coined by this guy who's a student. I'm super happy we're having this conversation because number one, you've taken a different career path than like anyone else that we've had on the podcast. So like that's super cool, and that makes me super happy. And then number two, given that you've taken this like like your own path, and like you're doing this kind of research, like can you talk a little bit about what what it is about your research that was like interesting and exciting to you, and then kind of like, yeah, like what would be like a really awesome role for you in like 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. So just so what it is about my research that's interesting. I mean, I think I kind of might have covered this, so let me know if I'm covering too much of the same ground here. But the at a certain point, so there's the field of media studies, and there's also something, Hugh, you might recognize this term, the cultural studies is like very similar to media studies. It's kind of born out of this school called Birmingham School in the 1980s, a fellow named Stuart Hall, if you've ever heard of that. But basically, the notion of everyday practices of what we're doing in our lives being worth studying, and how we are consuming media being like a legitimate form of like social practice, basically. So like, and this is again based off of you know, going back to the foundational concepts in media studies, we're studying like, okay, what's happening in opera, what's happening in film, what's happening in high art. And the cultural studies side of it, and the side that I find very interesting, is, okay, that's interesting to look at, say, like, you know, it's one thing to look at Martin Scorsese films and say like, oh, there is this happening and that's great and that's so cool and spend so much time making this movie. But it's another thing to, and this is what keeps me coming back to the work, is how do we act when like when our pocket vibrates, you know, when there's a notification, or what is the like emotional reaction to you know, like seeing an ad on Instagram that you might not like, or even that you do like. So that sort of notion of studying the everyday and sort of trying to apply these you know, cultural theories to it, or trying to just validate even those everyday behaviors that folks hold through scholarly study, that's sort of what keeps me coming back at a certain point. And I've forgotten the second part of your question, embarrassingly enough. I wrote down the first part, but
The second question was, what does a really cool and engaging role for you in 5 to 10 years look like?
Yeah, so yeah, that is maybe why I've avoided that question subconsciously. No, joking here, but yeah, certainly. I think that a lot of folks in my field and my program, especially, the kind of the career track looks like MA program, doctoral program, potentially postdoc, and then into some sort of research appointment as a professor. And I think that's a really like valid career track. I think that's you know, obviously an ideal world. How great would it be for pursue my research all day? That's, and obviously that's not all that professors do. Like there's a lot more that happens in a university. But yeah, there's, I guess, an ideal career track. I'm still kind of finding it at this point. I'd say definitely something that as I've kind of grown in this program since I've been at UT for the past several years, I've definitely come to enjoy a lot more teaching, a lot more kind of helping folks like get access to either these theories or to like just the writing mechanical skills that we teach in our classes, or that I teach over at the, not teach rather, but facilitate at our writing center. So something that allows me to keep interacting with people, hopefully on a daily basis, and helping them to, take the time to think about what they're doing in their daily lives and express themselves about it in some way. So that might have been a vague answer, but that's the answer I got for you right now.
Cool. Hugh, up to you. How should we shape the rest of this interview?
I've been deep diving, not really deep diving. I've been kind of spending a bit of time listening to the interviews with the gentleman called Tristan Harris. He's
from Tristan Harris, right? The fellow from The Social Dilemma.
Yes. It's been quite interesting. And I was listening to the Joe Rogan one of them recently. What was it, like episode 1736? And I was just in a conversation with someone I was talking with yesterday. And
Hugh, can you give a little background on who Tristan Harris is? And
Andy, please take it away.
I'm only familiar with his appearance in the film The Social Dilemma, but as well as I believe that he and Sophia Noble did an interview for Time magazine for Meghan Markle and Harry. But he is someone who formerly worked in the tech industry. Specifically, I believe he was one of the early folks on it was something Google. It was either Gmail or Search. I don't want to mischaracterize, so I'll just say he formerly worked in the tech industry. But he has taken a much more critical stance against tech recently, and has become a sort of figurehead for society needing to slow down or use less technology, or not use our phones, specifically not use so much of smartphones and platform-based social networks. And that's I believe in that, in the I don't know what you call it, docudrama. Have you all seen The Social Dilemma?
It was quite a lot. Yeah.
I have. I was not surprised by anything. I was just like, like
makes sense. Great.
Yeah, and I think there's a real value to that, to kind of communicate just how alarming the state of social media is to a wider audience like that. And I feel like that's Tristan Harris is I think that's one of his skills, at least from what I've ascertained from just what I've seen of him, is communicating that sort of message in a really concrete, example-based way for a wide audience. And I think that's a really valuable skill.
Yeah, I'm again very basic right now, but some of the statistics that were being used are really fascinating me. We're talking about supposedly TikTok. This is about 13 minutes and 25 seconds into episode 1538. I was just analyzing this the other day and sending this link. So they put in a 2% beautification filter on TikTok. What does that mean? Basically, there's this underlying game of social networks that it's like free market dynamics, in the sense, if someone doesn't do it, someone else will. And there's no ethics to it. And it's maximizing the time in which people are staying on apps, and how do you maximize the stickiness of them. And it's only for those types of growth metrics rather than ethical metrics. And it's interesting to think about how even to me, it just blew my mind. I was I understand why Snapchat filters in a way are very unhealthy, especially the hyper exaggerated ones. And personally, that's why I have such a hard time. I don't have them on my phone anymore, because I just can't unsee what I've seen, especially as a designer of product in this industry. And so with that, it's the 2% filter that's added on just to subtly have people see something that's not actually real, right? talk about talk about you know, like Roland Barthes' punctum of changing what people are seeing, right? Like I haven't used that term in too long, but you know, or like what is the other one? I'm gonna flex here. What John Berger, way of seeing? like everybody has their
Yeah.
different like ways, and we have all of our backgrounds of history and context, and or like what's another term? It's been years since I've used these terms. Semic axes that we like cross and converge on, right? Hey, did I do it well?
There you go. Yeah.
And so like with that, we have that perspective, but it's funny and it's blowing my mind of how we're actually now able to take those semic axes and start to like manipulate them, and these digitalized products that are mass produced onto the pocket, as Andy's talking about, of push notifications that cause people to take their attention. Very, very simple, very basic. Everybody knows this. It's just, it's kind of mind blowing. And then, you know, the simple one from The Social Dilemma, the person who designed, I don't know if it was Tristan or if it was someone else, but they designed the infinite scroll, pull to refresh, you know, and then check. And that is interesting that he's also comparing in certain ways. I guess this is turning into like like a lot about what he was saying. It's just like China has created stops, and they've designed stops in their apps where after a certain amount of scrolling infinitely, they'll have you like wait X amount of seconds. And we don't have any of those social stop cues. And then also like turning off their social apps, he was mentioning, in China from like 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. for their children under like 14 or 16 or something. Totally incorrect numbers, but something for the younger adults. And we don't do any of that. Or their search algorithms or recommendation feeds are curated not to like the dancing, you know, really westernized influencer culture of this is how you become wealthy and famous is by dancing or whatever, you know, but theirs is like curated content to science and research and like trying to inspire their kids to become more product or creation focused. I was like, whoa, I don't know yet what I think about these types of dynamics regarding free market or just open, non-restricted freedom of speech versus curated, designed experiences in order to craft society and or the next generation and the way in which they perceive the world and or create their future value or create value for others in the future, or you know what their goals are in life. And I don't know what that line is, but it's been really interesting for me from that perspective of, since I really love design, how does human-centered design, what does that even mean? And yeah, and Andy also like vibrations in the pocket, like ghost notification vibrations. Sometimes I feel like my phone vibrated and I'm like, my phone's not even there. Why did my leg just tingle? Like there's some real stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to grab on there, and I'm glad you're bringing up John Berger and Roland Barthes from our old, oh god, who was that? Who was that with Alice Uhas? Or
For me, it was I think it was Professor Rita something. Oh man,
Rita Talmor. That's right. We were in that. Yeah,
I love that. That was my favorite class. Honestly, like I realized I couldn't ever get another class like that. It was junior year, discovered it, and then I never got to just dive deeper. That was one of the. I loved that. Remember that my photo project? Oh man. Anyway,
it was great. Yeah, I loved it, dude.
Good times. Good times. Anyways, we digress.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to grab onto there though about certainly I haven't heard that particular podcast, so I can't speculate too much on the what Tristan was saying there, but it's certainly interesting to talk about the new, like you're talking about, like the physiological maybe like impacts of like the phantom buzzes and the at least what I'm more concerned of is like not only that our phones are doing that or that we're doing that, but that it's accepted as normal at a certain point. And you're certainly seeing that. You're right about the like the profound lack of regulation in the US for what algorithms or how these sort of programs are designed. I don't I think you're definitely, that sounds like a really interesting show. I'll have to check it out if I can.
I'll send it to you and I'll add it to the show notes below too.
Perfect. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Cal Newport and his work?
Cal Newport? No, I'm not sure if I've heard of that person before. Can
He
you
wrote,
just
yeah, he wrote. So he's an academic. He's like a computer science professor, but he wrote a book called Deep Work and wrote a bunch of other books. And a lot of his popular books are like he writes about how like social media, about how yeah, like all these things are just like grabbing our attention, about how every time you check your phone, like it seems so innocent. And he has a lot of like arguments, but the big one is that in order to be very competitive in this world, like it's pretty important to not to like not have social media and like not have all these other things that like get other people's attention. And then he writes about things like yeah, just about how to like work more effectively. Because to my understanding, he works like 9 to 5, and he's a tenured professor, and then also like writes books and also like has a podcast and just like is incredibly productive. But he's not like slaving away. He still hangs out with his kids, and he's just like really diligent with his work. So I like, I think I've read all his books, unless he's written something recently, but his books, his research, his work like really helped me like think deeply about career and how to be good at working and like when to say no to things. But when he made a podcast, I was like listening to every episode, and then very shortly realized that he's just saying the same thing over and over again. So I'm glad I reached that point, because but yeah, a lot, like he's very like anti-social media. He's never had social media. He's very diligent about like when he gets into his home, his phone is just like by the front door somewhere. So
yeah, that's such an interesting perspective to hear as well, because like there are the two sides that are like sort of the side that I study of social media, you know, is maybe a little bit it sounds like an interesting angle that he's bringing in, because the sort of way, and correct me if I'm not framing this the way that he's framing it, but sort of the idea being that like that social media, it impedes on your productivity. It impedes, like it sort of stops you from thinking deeply. So like, you know, you don't want to use Instagram because you're going to get distracted from, you know, working on your, it seems like he has quite a few best-selling books out. So maybe he doesn't want to go on Instagram, because if he doesn't for a year, he can write another 100 pages or something like that. And that's definitely, I think that's a really interesting angle to take, that like, you know, social media as an impediment to productivity.
mm-hmm.
And there's also the other side of it, being what I study, or maybe a little bit closer to what I study, being that social media is, because sort of the division, when I talk about everyday life, I'm not talking about the workday necessarily. So it's affecting during this productivity period, like this workday that you're talking about, but it's also impacting us in our like rest or leisure time. And I think that's sort of, I mean, that's kind of undeniable at a certain point. If you're looking at social media as a sort of all-encompassing a sort of framework for how we're communicating, then it does impact both our work and our leisure time. But that's certainly an interesting. Appreciate you citing that work there. I'll have to go check it out and see. I mean, don't we all need a new way to be more productive in these times? It's always
Absolutely.
It's
yeah. And for clarification, he himself does not have social media, and he's very careful about his like information diet, but he also understands, like, if you're an influencer, it's part of your job. But I think what was one of his books? It was like Digital Detox, something like that. But he writes about how he suggests that everyone just like cuts everything off for 30 days and then like slowly introduce the parts that provide like a net benefit. So
it's interesting.
Yeah,
like
it's yeah.
Social media elimination diet at a certain point.
I love that you called that a social media diet or
well, I think
that's so cool. It's funny. My fun little fact, Andy, about this is about a year ago now, I uninstalled all of the main social media apps like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Didn't really have TikTok, but I uninstalled it and never really used it. But it was interesting. Within like 2 days, I have an iPhone. I'm an iPhone user, and you have statistic metrics, so very light metrics of phone usage. Guess how many percentage, oh my God, what's the words like? Guess what my daily percent usage of time went down by?
I'm going to say conservatively 10%.
63.
Ooh.
So it went down by 63% pretty much overnight, and I haven't installed them since. And it's been interesting. So it's been really interesting for me because I don't use Snapchat at all anymore. Like, even if people are interested, I'm just like, nope, don't even. Yeah. And then Facebook, it's interesting. I like now do some like Brazilian jiu-jitsu and going to some different, I'm like on the board of the Gilbert Sister Cities, right? And they communicate events via Facebook events. And it's funny because I actually don't even go on anymore. I don't even accept that. And I don't go on to Facebook events or open Facebook for that. But with one interesting edge case that it's funny to like analyze the way in which you have those like external forces kind of influencing upon you there. It's like, it's just such for me, it's been really interesting to navigate from a firsthand perspective viralicity and or advertising of products that are social network based. And for me, it's been really interesting getting continual links on Instagram from people sharing stories or certain like sound bites that then draw me back in, right? Like there's those hyperlinks, they pull you in, you go to the web browser flow possibly pushes an Instagram download link. It knows that you don't have it, but then I don't watch it, I don't sign in, or I have to sign in. It depends on what barriers it has. And it's like, as a designer, it's interesting to analyze those types of sticky points and onboarding flows. But it's been really interesting how I can't get away from Instagram. I still have to, from only a web browser, the only thing I allow myself to is to go and be on there. And now I actually have a rule where I don't even follow back. If people follow, I don't even like, I'm like, the only thing I will do right now that I can allow myself to do, and I still haven't changed it yet, is to see and view something if someone sends it directly to me via iMessage or a messenger, WhatsApp or something, and then I'll view it. But if it's sent to me via the Instagram messenger, I won't know because I don't get that push notification because it's not natively installed on my phone. And and now even when I see that I have unread messages in Instagram, I don't actually allow myself to open them. Talk about weird. I'm very weird, but it's been a very interesting perspective for me to kind of like navigate through. And then even in like dating environments too, and such like that, it's been very fun. But yeah, I thought you'd be kind of interested in that random insight.
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, there's something really interesting there, right? Because I also am someone who, near the start of the pandemic, I uninstalled, Twitter and Instagram, like the apps from my phone, and I have since deleted my Facebook as well.
Did you
Um,
delete it? Because I couldn't actually export my data from Facebook. It's so messed up. Like you can't, I didn't want to lose all the photos and stuff from my college, but the download link for all your data is broken or it won't download after days. And you're like, they probably do not fix this on purpose. But anyways,
yeah. No, it's probably, well, then I might be using the wrong word for delete then. But
uninstall.
whatever it is, deactivated it, whatever.
Got you.
I don't have a Facebook page. Maybe speaking in the
Cool.
present tense is a better way of saying it.
Oh, you can deactivate. Didn't know that. That's awesome.
I think it's something like that. I'll have to go back and look at the exact, but then, and yeah, you're right. Like there are those moments where like, for instance, like a lot of people will send me stuff on Twitter, which I'm on the desktop. Just I have a Chrome extension that blocks it from like 9 to 5 on weekdays. But people will like send me things like that, and there is like that use case, right? There's that affordance where it would be cool to see like like Hugh, like you're talking about what my friends are sending me and have that notification get through. But because of the platform, and I don't like the way that using it makes me feel at a certain point, I don't use it on my phone. But then there's also things that are more troublesome about the way that platforms, especially, and I'm glad you're bringing up Facebook, have become integrated into the way our society functions. Like, for instance, kind of the prototypical example is, I don't know if y'all heard about it in Austin, but oh God, 1 year ago would be 2021. The February 2021, we had that the deep freeze where like a lot of folks lost power. We were lucky enough. We live near the university hospital, so it's we kind of weren't too badly affected by that. We didn't lose power for it was like on and off for a little bit, but and water and all that good stuff. But then you had the city of Austin when they were doing their broadcasts, sort of updating people about the status of things and public services. They did that on Facebook Live. So you have these sort of public service things they're not just for fun at a certain point. These are for people who are facing really dangerous situations, but it's tied to this platform at a certain point. And so I think you're right that there is like at a certain, or maybe not, I don't mean to put words in your mouth. I'm not sure if you characterize it this way or not. But that like there is the way that we're all using social media, that like there's that barrier to entry. And it's cool to hear you talking about it from that design perspective, because that's not a perspective I'm intimately familiar with. So there's that daily usage, but then there's also the way that daily usage gets wrapped up in like public good, or like these public uses that Facebook, like, the city broadcasting on Facebook Live. So maybe that was kind of a little bit circular there, but I think there's definitely, I'm glad you're bringing that up there, because that's a really interesting tension. I think that we all have to, just because, again, getting back to the deregulation of social media and the internet more generally, it's a sort of balance that's been left in the consumer's hands. About all of us need to choose how we navigate these platforms in our daily lives, which is, it's something.
I noticed something interesting. So
Mhm.
I deactivated Instagram and I deactivated Facebook. I think it was like 3 years ago, actually.
Oh, cool.
And it was interesting because like I actually used Facebook Messenger a lot. Like I used Instagram to like keep in touch with people, because that's what people use it for. And yeah, I think I deactivated them was, I think I was starting to read about it and like understand what it was doing to my attention, and just like being more aware of what it was doing. I also had a work day where I looked at my usage, and I had been on Instagram for like 4 hours in one day, and it was just so it was just so shocking to me. And so I deactivated them, and it was interesting because in the past I would scroll through a feed, and there would be people who post stories and people who make Instagram posts, and you feel like you're passively like part of someone's social circle, or like you passively like this person is like in your a part of your community. And yeah, and then but now like I just text people or I call people, and I've realized for me I'm more likely to like text someone or call someone, or like even occasionally like write a letter and just be like, hey, how are you? And I really treasure that, because by not passively being part of someone's life, I'm way more likely to proactively be like, hey, like what's up in your life? And I just feel like it's been a huge benefit to me. And like, yeah, there's the occasional time when like something is being planned and it's on Facebook Messenger and I'm just like not a part of it. But it's actually not that bad, because because someone is there to like just tell me the summary, and I just go, sure. And like I don't need to be there to plan everything. And there's probably like maybe like one wedding that I was like not invited to because the person couldn't find me. It's like, it's okay. um and so yeah, that was like really interesting to see, because um just like how I view my community, and like how I become more active with like staying in touch with people. Because like I text more now, but I'm I'm happy with that, because I'm actually, I'm making plans with people. I'm like keeping in touch with people. I'm like, I do like video chat. I get to hang out with Hugh, and then maybe Moonty podcast happened partially because of that action 3 years ago. Who knows? You can't really test it, but yeah, that was like really interesting to like see that, and like also see that it seemed like such a big jump at the time, but it's like now I'm actually glad that I don't have it, because I feel like it makes some things so much more complex, and I'm just glad to like not deal with it at all.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, like that, going off of social media, or at least like reducing your involvement with it. And it sounds like this is kind of universal for all three of us. I don't mean to generalize here though, but it sounds like getting those deeper connections, even if they're fewer, like, you're probably not spending 4 hours a day writing letters to your friends at a certain point. But but like there's that deeper involvement that also takes like less time out of your day. And that's yeah, I think maybe I don't have an answer for that, but that's exciting to hear that. I think a lot of folks are afraid to leave social media because they're worried they'll become disconnected with people. But this experience you're talking about of feeling more connected and more deeply or more intimately to people because of the action you took to get away from platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an exciting thing to hear.
Also, to clarify, being more connected with fewer people, which is like a trade-off I'm willing to have.
Absolutely, yeah.
I love that. That's fun. And just to thwart confirmation bias, since we're all on a similar train here. For anyone who is part of the social media realm and is deep into Instagram and stuff, I also just note that I have had a lot of conversations with a lot of good friends about this and think about it a lot too, in the sense that there is a lot of positive utility that is derived from social media networks, especially Instagram feeds, depending on what you follow or who you follow or interact with, right? Like if you really do find positive feedback and happiness and that type of like feedback that's positive from those interactions, that's awesome. So that's not a bad thing as long as it's healthy, and also you understand what the real design behind it is, of like how it's been designed in that sense, or like the content you digest. If it's infinite scrolling mindlessly, maybe not the best, but if it's like if you're a content creator even, and it's positive content that does help people and push the world forward and create value for others and help them with depression and or find them some place of solace in the virtual realm if they're deeply nested into the COVID world, right? And they can't get out, right? There's a lot of beautiful content that's being created in just the virtual space. And so that's not to taboo all of social media, but just our own decisions and still finding out our balances. And the other thing that I thought is kind of interesting is, especially on the notification realm of things and curating one's experiences on how one is able to be reached and at what times and hours of the day. Andy, have you looked into, or you said you're an iPhone user, have you looked into like the new focus at times and stuff like that? The focus features?
Yeah, certainly. And first to just repeat that, no, happiness is hard enough to find in this world. I'm not here to tell anyone to not do what makes them happy. I mean, it's, so I have looked into the, like the broader, like do not disturb. And like you're saying, the new focus times in
like
Apple.
Work state or like focus state or custom notification states. Curious. Yeah,
it's really interesting, right? Like the, because something we talk about a lot is like, what are the affordances of this? And the fact that it allows you to I guess I've not had the chance to like look at it too closely, but from 1,000 feet, I'll tell you, I like the fact that it allows you to block notifications from different apps at different times. Like for instance, I can't really turn on do not disturb completely when I'm working, because I still want to get access to emails. Like if a student emails me with something timely, but like maybe having it off for messaging would be good. I think that's definitely a really, that's a really neat affordance of it. And certainly I think that's a recognition on the part of, I'm not intimately familiar with the design team over at Apple, but yeah, maybe like a recognition there that that's something that people want in their daily lives, is the ability to, not be notified quite so frequently, not be drawn back into these, into whatever apps that they're using. We're talking a lot about social networks, but hell, like Candy Crush sends notifications too, I'm sure. I guess to give an answer, to make a long answer a little bit shorter there, I like the features of that, sort of the new stuff they're doing with Do Not Disturb and Work Focus. I'm still exploring it a little bit too, though.
Can I just point out that I don't think it's quite random that Hugh like deleted Instagram and like other social apps from his phone, and then also became the youngest design director of all time at his company, and then also is like the Gilbert, what were you again? Like the chair, or what was this?
I'm just on the board of directors.
Board of directors. So I'm just saying it happened. I'm not saying there's causation or anything. I'm just saying, like, I just look at what it's in front of me. And a
little anecdata there for you.
That being said, I think we're close on to the hour. And Andy, we ask all our guests this, but do you have any words of wisdom, any parting thoughts to our 6 or 7 listeners?
Yeah. I mean, I think I kind of said a version of it earlier, but yeah, it's I think the way that I've come to understand technology just through studying it, media technology specifically, is that there are a lot of different ways to use technology, to use media, to consume media, to produce media. And whatever at a certain point, if it makes you happy and it isn't hurting anybody, then that's the right way to use media for you, I think. Again, a lot of the foundation of media studies is based in this sort of elitism around media. But like, hell, I mean, before this, I was watching House Hunters International with my fiance. Like it's, I'm in a program that kind of, originally started studying like, like genre of Hollywood film and things like that. And like Mexican American film history. And, again, maybe that's a little bit rambling here, but what I'm trying to say is happiness is hard to find. So if it doesn't hurt anyone, do what makes you happy.
Heard it here first.
You heard it here first. Amazing. Wow. Really, Andy, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And John, it was great meeting you. And Hugh, it's good catching up for a while.
Really was. Hope to see you soon, and hopefully if you're ever in town, definitely let me know. If I'm in Austin, I'll definitely let you know. But with that, another episode of the Moon Tea podcast is sadly coming to an end. Thank you again, Senor Andy Wright, soon to be Doc, whatever. But thank you so much. This is a podcast where we talk about craft, community, and building meaningful careers. Please tune in next time. Thanks again. See ya.
Peace.